Hello, everybody. This is Ella speaking, and I thought I shared a few of the recent pedagogic research related to blended learning with you guys. Uh, these are very recent papers that I've selected for you, and they are discussing the changes happened in their organizations. They all use a large cohort of students, over 300 to 400, and specifically discussing student satisfaction and how they felt about the transition to online and blended form of learning. And they will be discussing what are the ways forward and whether we can be using blended learning not just for the duration of COVID and the period that we are facing in the next few months, but also perhaps afterwards, and how would our students in the current situation feel about it and what their response were. So hopefully by the end of this short presentation, we have something to think about. The purpose is not convince you this is the way to go, but throwing some ideas at you and let you know that other organizations facing the same things that we are facing, and an opportunity that we can learn from things they have done in their organizations, or things that they have been facing in their organizations, and things that we should perhaps be considering or need to consider if we would like to make things better and improve our service, despite the fact that we are in a rather unprecedented situation currently. Okay, let's get us started then. The COVID-19 situation is nothing new to us, and since January, February this year, 2020, we have been involved, as well as the rest of the Europe, and we were seriously affected since March, where the university asked us to close down all the classrooms and face-to-face activities from 19th-20th of March, if I remember correctly. And we made this transition rapidly and showed flexibility. We rapidly adapt with the situation and used every power that we have had to deliver the best possible knowledge transfer to our students. Although COVID-19 might not have affected those who were studying literature, languages, perhaps history, geography, or disciplines that are not relying too much on interaction with peers or interaction in the laboratories or face-to-face activities such as visiting patients in medical schools or in dentistry, nursing, but we have all been affected one way or another, and some of us have been affected more, particularly life sciences, biological sciences, those who need being trained in laboratory and get some skills in that discipline were more affected or have been more affected. And it was not just the closure of the university, but the social distancing as well that would deprive them from peer-to-peer interaction with their senior peers, junior peers, and the peers at their own level, as well as having that flexibility to work in laboratory. And in terms of medical students and nursing and dental students in dentistry, they lost that contact with patients as well. Another question that would rise and has been in our mind recently is that how we go forward from here, and should we continue teaching remotely, and if we should, how we should actually do this. And we have been experiencing, based on our students' emails or communications, surveys, feedbacks, that there is a resistance to change, and most of a majority of our students perhaps would like that everything goes back to normal. We as university teachers have been more realistic and thinking about blended learning. And I must highlight that we have been using blended learning, whether we noticed it or not, for quite some time. And it's not new for the last year, last few months, but over a decade since technology and IT technology information systems have been developed. Since we are using lecture captures, since we have started providing contents on Blackboards and doing some of the examinations and submitting things through the KLE. Other university and organizations across the pond using different system, but all in all, we are using information systems to actually communicate with our students and transfer knowledge that way. And although our students are not happy at it when it comes to the COVID situation, but if you look back at their students' attendance, which most of our classrooms is below 50%, because it's not obligatory and because everything is in this on-demand platform, our students have been using it, but perhaps without realizing it, and perhaps by raising awareness and highlighting the fact that they already benefiting from these platforms and this form of knowledge transfer, they wouldn't be so much concerned and unhappy about the situation. I must also confirm that based on recent literature that I read, not all the medical schools and life sciences, biological sciences have managed to actually introduce the blended learning, mixed learning online as well as a traditional form, or switching completely to online in recent months post-COVID and the pandemic as effectively and efficiently as we did. Some organizations actually missed a golden period of a few weeks for some 6 weeks between the time that they made the decision, so between the decision making and implementation. And that has affected their staff, their researchers, as well as the students as well. So we did well, but I'm trying to provide some data based on pedagogy research and recent outputs that to show you that we are not in this boat alone. Everybody else is also facing the same things, and highlighting what we can learn from their findings and what are few possible ways to move forward. Questions that we are facing now are not easy questions to answer. And the main question we have been asking ourselves in recent meetings that is it enough what we are doing? What else we can do to support our students? Is it enough to provide lecture captures and video recording our lectures? How long should the duration of them be? And should we include video conferencing in addition to all the like synchronous, asynchronous activities that we have? How much should we replace the traditional teaching? How do we deliver and deal with the practical activities? How to maintain that quality and adhere to those quality assurance criteria, and most of all, how we can achieve our student satisfaction and have it the same at the height and the same good level as we had before. And that includes the opinion of our home student as well as international students and guest students, especially if you would like to offer a competitive service as a service provider in the higher education center in the UK. So what are the lessons learned from the higher education centers worldwide? Based on the pedagogic research that I've selected for you guys, at least 3 very new papers recently published, and one of them is still in review, but soon will be published and available to you guys to read as well as in papers that have already been published in discussing blended learning or online learning at higher education. It has been shown that the students overall prefer the traditional knowledge transfer, having the lecture rooms, classrooms, and sitting there, based on their surveys, of course. Having said that, a good majority, around 65% of students, actually welcomed a combination of having traditional learning mixed with online learning. So the blended learning was actually favored by the majority of students. We are going to discuss in more detail about these statistics and divide students group, stratify them in a way. But for now, let's focus on the students who are studying or have been studying in disciplines that relied on practical activities. And those students, actually, majority of them felt that a combination of traditional and online methods would not benefit them. There are ways to improve students' opinion that we are going to discuss in next few slides, but at the moment I'm just transferring the knowledge and the results of what the survey of these in these organizations demonstrated. Most importantly, when it comes to communication between peers, peer-peer interaction, whether this is the student who would like to talk to the supervisor, module manager, personal tutor, a whopping majority, around 85% of students, actually felt that that level of communication was not there, so they miss out. And these statistics are not just number I am putting forward, but actually I'm flagging that in order for us to learn from their findings or findings in other organizations, and for us to help our students better, what we can do and what are the ways we can actually improve that peer-peer interactions and allow students to communicate better. So these are the things we can think about it. And I have a feeling that if we ask our students, we achieved better. I'm not aware of any survey going on at Kiel, but if anybody at Kite or any of the lecturers in different faculties have done any research, it would be lovely to see what our students have been thinking about, because I believe that we went far and beyond in helping our students. Speaking for myself, even I did a mock interview for them online and face-to-face. Even I guided them in their applications and providing so many reference letters while we were marking exams in those hectic periods of switching to online and blended learning mode. So having said all of these, it is important to discuss these things and see what is happening in other organizations, and flagging that we are not in this alone, and we should try to learn from the lessons learned in other organizations as well. What are the things we need to consider when it comes to blended learning? And I'm not just considering and talking about implementing it, but also thinking about the road ahead we have if we would like to use blended learning, not just for the period of COVID-19, but even afterwards. This situation is forcing us to actually pilot a study, pilot an experience in using blended learning and other advanced and using other advanced and teaching and learning strategies and tools. But having said that, we talked about the statistics of how our students feeling and these are major organizations, major universities in the Europe that are affected by COVID. And we highlighted that the students are resisting, they still prefer the old-fashioned traditional classrooms. How should we deal with student satisfaction? What about our staff? Are we prepared, and how we can support our staff? Are we ready for this new era of teaching and delivering our curriculum in this way, in an online format or a blended learning format? Other questions we need to ask ourselves and answer and find a suitable answer for is that how could we provide that quality assurance that we used to do? How can we standardize things? How can we kind of guarantee our students' employability and also our staff's employability, supporting them to have enough skills to not just be able to work in our organizations, but if they happen to move on for family reason, for any reason on the other side of the UK or in Europe, they are still able to provide a service and be successful. Another important question we should ask ourselves, should we treat all students the same way as we used to treat it? In recent days and months, we are hearing about decolonizing curriculum. That's just one thing. BAME people, we have already have an established a curriculum that actually values people with disabilities, and we would like to recruit more of these students and actually colleagues as well, so bring more diversity to our teams. Should we treat all of our students the same, or can we provide a personalized curriculum, or at the very least a stratified curriculum that we are going to talk about it in the next slide. Let's pause for a moment and look at data again. In one of the surveys, it's been shown that when it comes to educating our students who need certain degree of hands-on activities in laboratory, in clinic, visiting patients, if they are studying dentistry, nursing, optometry, audiology, we can't deliver everything online, and we can't expect them to be successfully graduated. We can't produce or support our students produce good practitioners if they haven't had a chance to visit a patient, or we cannot train successful dentists if they never had a chance to visit patients or never had a sufficient amount of time spent with designing a denture or fixing teeth and so on. And based on the survey, we can actually see it, what the concern of students in European higher education centers were. Around 82% of them actually felt that this is not working. And it is explainable, isn't it? But as I mentioned before, certain disciplines require this amount of attention, and certain other disciplines like languages and those who are studying languages or history, literature might be more flexible to actually receive majority of their lectures online. And we use the space, we use the facilities, we use the resources that we have in a way that everyone would benefit from it, and we maximize the output and productivity. And these are examples that it might be in a paper reflecting the cohorts from School of Medicine or dentistry, but we can kind of relate to it because our life sciences rely on the students going to the wildlife, dealing with plants, or experiencing working with animals in the wildlife, and do some experiments. Our biological sciences and human biology and medical school students need to actually have some degree of interactions with their peers as well as their patients, or working in the laboratory. If someone would like to become a biomedical scientist, they certainly need to work with instruments to be able to someday measure the CRP in our plasma, that we are desperate to have these resources now. So there are ways to do this, and hopefully this short presentation would help us start thinking about what are the ways we can actually move forward. Blended learning and student acceptance. We have already talked about a few data pedagogy reports that showed their students, majority of them prefer traditional classrooms and traditional ways of knowledge transfer. Having said that, majority of students actually accepted that the situation was unprecedented and there was no other way. So they are understanding. All they are trying to tell us is that they are not comfortable if this is going to be the way forward. And perhaps some of us have received, like myself, received emails that the students really missing those classrooms for various reasons, and would like to go back on campus and everything goes back to normal. And the question is, even if there is a big if, everything goes back to normal, we don't know when, but at some point in future, near or far future, goes back to normal, would we still want to completely switch back to the classroom and traditional knowledge transfer methods? Or would we prefer to have the blended learning implemented and used more effectively and efficiently? I flagged a few ways that we could possibly move things forward, is like personalizing things. We didn't discuss it in detail, and it requires a lecture itself to talk about personalized teaching. But at the very least, we can mention briefly that as we talk about our students' need and support, we are actually offering it now. We are offering that personalized support, don't we? So it's nothing new. We shouldn't be scaring of the situation, or scared of the situation. The only things perhaps would help us more to establish this would be stratifying groups. Makes it easier, because personalizing things for a school of astrophysics is feasible because they only have 30 students, or for the MSc students would be feasible because they are only 10 to 15, maximum 20. But when it comes to neuroscience, biological sciences, and human biology and other life sciences groups, we are dealing with hundreds. I'm talking about 300 or 400 sometimes. So it's really foundation years the same. It really would be difficult to manage. But in large cohorts, perhaps we can use stratification while we are actually supporting those personalized approach. We are supporting our students in a personalized manner in special occasions, whether it is disability, whether it's pain situations, whether it is a hidden disability, whether students like IT literacy or don't have access to information technology or softwares or hardwares and so on. But for the majority of our students, we can actually group them in and provide a service that suits them. This would actually enhance the student success rate, because if we don't tailor-made things for a specific group and we treat all of our students equally, a group of students who have higher potential and they have already learned the basics, they would not benefit much from the sessions we are offering them, and therefore they might miss that opportunity to be even better, to become even better students. And when it comes to students that are a bit weaker and need more support to get where they're supposed to be, then they would be discouraged or disappointed because they felt inadequate. So if we use this stratification method, perhaps we can achieve more in implementing our blended learning as well. Let's pause again for 10-20 seconds and go back to data again. When it comes to video tutorials and live demonstrations, we talked about having some of our practicals in a format that somebody video recorded and demonstrated to the students. Based on recent studies, pedagogic research outputs, over 83% of students actually didn't like this. And again, learning from lessons and things that didn't work out in other organizations, perhaps we need to rethink this strategy that we would like to adapt and use, and think about it or rethinking it. What are other ways to go forward from here? Again, I must emphasize that this must vary between the disciplines, between the curriculums. So some disciplines would need more of these face-to-face activities and hands-on activities and engaging with practical work, and some other disciplines would benefit actually more if everything or almost everything is delivered online. So it is feasible, but again, perhaps require stratifications and personalized approach as and where applicable. So we talked about the student acceptance when it comes to blended learning. We talked about personalizing our approach or stratifying our students, and we actually mentioned that we have already been doing it, and perhaps in the post-COVID era, or if and only if we decided to take the blended learning approach forward, then we just need to tweak things that we have already been doing them in a way that are more compatible with the blended learning approach and blended learning curriculum. We talked about some statistics and how disappointed the students were because of the switch and how desperate they are to actually go back to the tradition. One more point is that in various organizations, between 50 plus minus sometimes percentages of students and their cohorts actually felt that having online activities is actually good and helpful, but if and only if they are offered as a supplementary activity rather than replacing the traditional teaching. How can we change their attitudes and opinion? How could we raise awareness in our students? And sometimes how could we raise awareness in our staff and supporting team? One of the ways to do this is by highlighting the importance of this change when it comes to their employability. Let me have again 20-second pause and flag the fact that if our students would like to be successful, whether take on another, advancing their higher education degree or take on a job now, work as a technician, work as a research assistant somewhere, work with industry or in academia, whether they would like to teach, they must be able to show a certain degree of flexibility. They must be demonstrating their ability to use information technologies and work from home, perhaps work remotely, deliver things online rather than face-to-face. Let me give you a couple of examples. When it comes to teaching, they should be demonstrating the certain degree of flexibility that we have been demonstrating, and we have not been trained before. We just been in the situation that we needed to adapt quickly. Another example would be a lot of us working in laboratory at one way or another. In one way or another, we have been facing a breakdown of an instrument. How many times we picked up a phone and talked to the technician on the other side of the line and asked them, our mass spec is not working, our EM machine is not working, our MRI machine is not working, what can we do? And I'm sure now that you're thinking about it, you actually feel that the approach was not that the technician would be jumping on a plane and actually being in our laboratory 2 hours later. But what is in reality happening is that they are talking on the phone with us, perhaps 1, 2, 3 days. They are sending us a protocol, how to troubleshoot things online. They walk us step by step how we can actually restart and reboot the system. And when every approach is exhausted and really the MRI machine is not working, the EM machine is not responding, or the mass spec is literally looks dead, then they would come in few days later and fix things. So by providing simple examples, real life examples, we can actually flag the fact that blended approach has already been there, whether it's come to teaching, whether it comes to delivering a job, a task, but our perceptions perhaps now has changed. Now we see that necessity and need to actually make the switch now and do not waste more time to adapt with this new era of utilizing technology that is made available to us to use. It is also important to note that we are going to have this online mode or blended learning mode of teaching and learning. And if you are providing the knowledge transfer via the information technologies or use a blended learning, we can't assess our students the same way. Of course we can, but it's best actually to assess our students in a new format as well. And these assessments could be assessing the objective or subjective outcome of a student's educations and learning. As we all have been doing this change, we can actually using the online platforms to assess our students and examine them. The benefit of it is not just for students to become expert in using technologies, but also for us to advance our skills, plus saving ourselves some time. In the past few months, we were marking over 300 essays, each and every one of us. And this golden time, we can use it to actually modernize the curriculum, to read new papers, to deliver more up-to-date science and knowledge to our students, because our time is limited. So if we are not exhausted in a way that could be prevented, so it's not necessary, things that are not necessary to be done the old-fashioned way, then we have the energy and enthusiasm to invest more in supporting our students, in supporting our students' educations, in supporting our students' career developments, in supporting our students enhancing their transferable skill. And this list can, I can go on and go on, this list is not exhaustive. At the same time, we need to make sure that we are adhering to those quality assurance criteria. And we also need to incorporate the students' voices. And I deliberately made the S of a students the plural and put the apostrophe afterwards to emphasize that all of our students' voice matter. I'm aware that we have representative, and perhaps if you are anyone like me, sometimes you might experience that the student voice might be limited to one or handful of people. Some people are shy, or some people's voice we might never heard. How about engaging with our students in a way when we are having these synchronous and live activities and interacting with our students on campus, allowing them to talk, all of them, so we hear all of their voices. And that's another way that we can actually enhance um, uh, the curriculum that we are designing as well, and allowing the students to actually participate in the design of their own curriculum. And most importantly, the way we are moving forward should be evidence-based. Like these few papers I am presenting to you guys, there will be more research done, I'm sure, in other organizations or at Kiel as well, that we can share with the world and world can share with us. The era that we would, although one size doesn't fit all, but we can learn from one another. We can adopt and modify approaches that other organizations might be actually using those approaches effectively and working for them. All we have to do is just tweaking these approaches and make it compatible to Kiel, make it compatible to staff who are working at Kiel, and make it compatible to the students that are working at Kiel. But we shouldn't underestimate the value of evidence-based studies and learn from other peers in different organizations across the pond, Australia, Asia, China, Russia, or wherever in this world. So we flagged a few things that we can do to actually enhance our students' awareness and acceptance. But we shouldn't forget that us as academics need to be prepared as well. The whole world is changing, the new technologies are emerging, and we are facing new challenges. What can we do and how can we do it to actually save ourselves time and be more efficient and effective and actually enjoy our work as well? One way is looking constantly at pedagogy reports, the same way that we did research, or we have been doing research. So we are not inventing the wheel. We normally look at what has been done in literature, what can we do more. Of course, we need to have a pilot that studies that are actually working in our lab. In this case, it's academia, it is teaching. So the same pattern would apply, but in pedagogy. At the pedagogy level. And therefore, by looking at the literature, looking at what other organizations are doing, what other peers are doing, what they are thinking while joining the meetings, we can actually design a curriculum that is suitable for our organization, for our students. And if I haven't mentioned before, not one size fit all. So we can fit it for our program, for our curriculum, by tweaking things, by modifying things, but also benefiting from what other people and what other peers have been discussing among themselves and within their organizations. Learn from their mistakes or the good things that they have been doing and they were successful. And this would help us to prepare a program, a course that actually is still attractive and not just attracting home students, but international students. And we win that competition that, we will offer that competitive program to our students wherever they come from. And automatically, if these are actually ticked, if we offer a personalized program, if at least we can stratify our program to suit different groups in our organizations, whether they are medical students, biological students, life sciences, or those who study astrophysics or history or languages, they can all benefit from it, then we would actually tick that box of a student satisfaction as well. Particularly, I can't emphasize enough, if we link it with the for prospective jobs and consider our student success as our own success. What else can we do? Plan ahead, work as a team. And I cannot emphasize and stress enough how teamwork is important, how much it is important. And believe it or not, not one size fits all. Again, we have to tweak things. Perhaps a program, an approach that works for wildlife sciences would not work for biological sciences, or vice versa. Things that would work perfectly well for medical school might not work for dentistry, and things that would work for the history and literature might not work for us either. And using this power of adaptability to our advantage to create that happy, active, and engaging learning environment that we have had so far, but now in a new format of blended learning. There is a question posed here about in one of the surveys that asked students how they felt about the communication between themselves and their senior peers and academic staff. And unfortunately, about like 73% of them said that they felt that they missed out and the communication failed between them and their supervisors and instructors. This is again another lesson to learn. How could we avoid that? How could we learn from this report, this statistics, this student survey to actually prevent it from happening in our organizations, in our organization, in our departments? And one way forward, perhaps we all have been more engaged, and I believe if we had a survey, maybe we have it and I don't know, but if we had a survey and we ask our students, I'm hoping that the percentage is much lower at Keele, because we went for and beyond our capacity and perhaps time limits to actually serve our students and help them better. I speak for myself, whether it is guiding them for the career advice, providing career advice, whether doing mock interviews with them, whether commenting and helping them understanding the answers they gave wrong in previous semesters, or guide them how to write essays and in various formats that was actually needed at the time. So paying attention to those things, those needs of our students that could be actually achieved easily, but just spending 5-10 more minutes time with them to answer their questions and clarify things. What do you think the road ahead would be? Or what do you think the road ahead should be? Based on these pedagogic reports we discussed, perhaps majority of academic organizations are now moving away from classroom. Although this cannot be completely applied to all disciplines, and it makes sense, we already discussed that, but more or less every discipline and every curriculum would be considering a form of blended learning from now on. In this brief presentation, we talked about implementing blended learning and benefits that it might bring with itself, challenges that it will bring with itself in case we would like to consider it and implement it. But we haven't highlighted all of the benefits that this approach might bring, or all of the challenges. For instance, this approach might actually help students to actually engage with more active learning. The things that we have always been struggling to achieve, at least myself in the past decade or plus experience in UK higher education teaching, that it's really difficult to encourage students and to value active learning. They all prefer that the passive form of the lectures, classrooms, and so on. So maybe implementing blended learning would actually achieve us, help us achieve this. We also talked about the importance of looking back at pedagogy reports, and we talked about the importance of investing in quality assurance. We talked about the importance of teamwork, and I cannot emphasize on that enough. We talked about the importance of student satisfaction as well as staff satisfaction, student success as well as staff success. And last but not least, I would like to emphasize that we need to always be mindful about the employability of our students, about promoting international collaboration, and this collaboration, these collaborations should not be limited to research only. Perhaps it's time to do collaborations in terms of pedagogy, exchange ideas, and exchange students that we used to do, and we have been doing until the COVID hits us, but it was in a physical manner. But perhaps we should explore different ways and approaches when it comes to sharing knowledge and transferring knowledge and educating our next generation. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed this short presentation. I know we cannot cover everything in a rapid communication, but at least I was hoping, and I am hoping, that this brief and rapid communication help you to bring everyone in the team up to date. A few lists of references that I used is added in here, but by no means this list is not exhaustive. And hopefully you can find that some of them is 2020, and some of them has not been even published yet, so they're under review, and some of them are old, so that represents that what we are talking about is not something that people haven't thought about it or planned or invest on it. If there is a chance for me, I would update and give you another form of quick communication of this type in near future, fingers crossed. And that would be related to the delivery of third year projects. And this is based on, again, perhaps not the pedagogy research, not evidence-based, but based on the webinars and activities I participated in the UK, some few universities such as Sheffield and Leeds, and some of them across the pond in America. So putting everything together to give you just a brief overview what other people are up to and what other people are thinking when it comes to delivery of third year projects. So hopefully we maintain this level of communication, and I'm not going to bore you and take more of your time. I leave you to it. Please feel free to provide feedback. If you want to discuss anything, I'm just over the MS team, instead of having an office and you knock on the door, you can knock on the MS team door, and we have a scientific chat. We discuss things and move things forward, because as one of my peers and former supervisors used to say, a good team is a winner. So in a simple way, so a good team is a team that would win, and the more we collaborate and work together is the best way forward, and perhaps takes away the pressure and burden of things that we have to individually carry on our shoulders. So with that bit, over to you, and that's it. Over and out. Bye bye.